You've often heard me saying right here on the India Story that one of the most important aspects of driving the India story and taking it forward is the ease of doing business, ending harassment, making sure that people who are compliant with the law have a good, easy, welcoming, benign atmosphere to actually do business in. And this is something which has been stated at multiple levels by everybody, whether it's industry or the government or experts. They all say that this is something that needs to be done. Well, there's some good news in a major development. The Jan Vishwas Amendment of Provisions Bill 2023 has now been successfully passed by Parliament. The primary objective of this bill is to bolster the ease of doing business by decriminalizing minor offences. This means elimination of jail sentences or conversion of them into fines and penalties to basically strengthen the business environment by streamlining operations, by saving valuable time and resources for both the government and for businesses. If it's a minor offence, if it's not something that requires years of prosecution, simplify the entire system. That's the principle behind this. This principle obviously needs to be extended even further, and that's what everyone's hope is, but it's a great start. And joining us now to talk about it is going to be Gautam Chikermane, the man who wrote the book Jailed for Doing Business, and a lot of the provisions that were actually amended in the Jan Vishwas Bill were also mentioned in your book. So Gautam, we're going to ask you, you must be happy to see this being done. You may also be feeling there's lots more to be done, and I'm going to be asking you what else still needs to be done. But before I get your reactions to this, let's just quickly play for you some of the major findings, some of the major amendments that were made in this bill.
The ease of doing business is something that the Modi government has been determined to improve. In a major development that furthers this aim, the Jan Vishwas Bill has been passed. The main objective of the bill is to do away with outdated rules of criminal punishment and reduce compliance burden. This bill decriminalizes minor offences through amendments in 183 provisions of 42 acts. It converts fines to penalties with the objective of avoiding court prosecution, and it removes imprisonment for several offences.
हाँ, आवश्यक कई सारे ऐसे कानून हैं जो आवश्यक भी है, जिसमें जेल की भी सराखों के पीछे भेजना पड़ सकता है. अगर कोई गंभीर कानून का उल्लंघन हो तो अवश्य जेल भी रहेगा प्रावधान. लेकिन सरल जो गलतियां होती हैं उस या कोई पहली बार गलती करते हैं उसको एक मौका दिया जाए, सुधरने का एक मौका दिया जाए कि वो आगे गलती ना करे. दंड हो, पेनल्टी के रूप में, फाइन के रूप में दंड हो, पर एक सरल व्यवस्था हो.
Small mistakes, technical and procedural errors that can lead to imprisonment not only causes fear but also proves to be a burden on the courts. With this bill, the aim is to lessen the burden on the legal system and simultaneously boost investor confidence and improve the ease of doing business in India. The bill seeks to establish a balance between the severity of the violation and the gravity of the punishment prescribed. Experts say these changes will enhance India's credibility as a global investment and manufacturing destination. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And joining us now for a lot more on that, Gautam Chikermane, senior journalist, the man who actually wrote Jailed for Doing Business, a book which, how many provisions did you find, compliances and other such things which could be done away with? But 113 are gone, or 131 are gone now.
So first thing is, it has been written by Rishi Agrawal and me. So I'm the co-author. There are two.
We're going to get Rishi in here one of these days to talk about this.
You must get Rishi.
I will.
He is the data man. Now, in this particular bill, there are 183 provisions that have been decriminalized, of which 113 pertain to doing business. The others are they are outside the ambit of doing business, or let us say the corporate parts. Of these 113, if you put it in perspective, firstly, I'm delighted that the bill has been passed by Parliament. I'm delighted that after we wrote the report, the manner in which the government took cognizance of our findings. In 1 week, we had met 3 ministries, 1 cabinet secretary, and the ball was rolling at Niti Aayog. They formed a committee where each of these ministries was called, the fine-tuning of each of those, the compliances that came under those particular ministries were listed, and there was a big debate about which should go, which should stay. There was a debate about how to decide which should go and which should stay. So I'm delighted that in 1 year, we published our report.
And that's
in February.
important because a lot of people say the government moves really slowly, in 1 year, bang, the bill is passed, it's law.
This is the fastest that I have experienced. In February 2022, our report came out. By February 2023, the bill was in Parliament. It came in the last date, on the last day of the winter session, which is sometime in December.
And presumably this is being pushed to the highest levels.
And now we have the bill. So I think it's exceptional. The process by which the bill has passed, which is has been enacted, is fascinating in the sense that it's a usual process. The cabinet prepares the bill, it tables it in Parliament, it goes to a select committee. It generally goes to a parliamentary committee. This time it went to a select committee. The select committee gave its recommendations. Some changes were made. It was retabled. The Lok Sabha passed it. Rajya Sabha has now passed it. It awaits the presidential seal, and before it becomes law through a gazetted. So I think this
Can I just ask one leading question? In the middle of this entire process, the fact that it was done so fast, and in your various meetings, was there this recognition that you were hearing from the government at the highest levels? Ease of doing business is crucially important. Reducing compliance is crucially important. Ending harassment, which India has been notorious for forever, is crucially important. Is that the central message that lies behind this?
So this I cannot answer in a yes, no. The government right at the top wants the change. At the political level, the government wants change. At the political level, they pushed with all their might to get this done. At the level of the organization of the meeting at NITI, we found Amitabh Kantji. He was the CEO then. He was fantastic. Organizing everything, getting the secretaries on the table, putting the force behind what he had been asked to do. Down the line, we faced resistance in the sense that who has been jailed so far? Please tell us. This was a common refrain from almost every ministry. Tell us who has been jailed so far. And my answer to all of them has been the same. Perhaps nobody, and that requires a different research. If you want, we will do that research. But my gut is that perhaps nobody has been jailed for any provision that we have listed, which is 26,134. But what does that tell you about you?
It could also be because people are paying money and not getting it.
What does that tell you about you? First, you are not doing your job. Because if there is a law of the land, it is your job to ensure that, because you have been tasked with it, it is your job to ensure that the law is followed. If the law is not being followed, and if there is nobody in jail, it probably means rent seeking is happening at a mass level, which is what through anecdotal evidence we keep hearing.
And so obviously rent seeking, polite word for corruption and bribery, means that do away with the provisions and nobody can make money to start with, right? That's a logical process.
That's it. So now we there is a small layering here as well. The 26,134 provisions are there at an aggregate for all businesses in India, okay? Nowhere have we argued that each of these provisions needs to go. We are only seeking a rationalization. For instance, if you don't paint the inner walls of your latrines once every quarter, does that ensure a jail term? If you don't reconstitute the canteen committee every 2 years, despite the fact that your canteen contractor is giving you great service, is that a jail term? I don't think so. But willful tax evasion, should that be a jail term? Absolutely. Willful destruction of the environment, should that be a jail term? Absolutely. Now, how much should that jail term be, etc.? What should the fine be? We sought a rationalization, not an ending of all compliance, of all imprisonment.
I'm going to come to some of the broader issues around this in just a second or two. But first of all, from the point of view of what the Jan Vishwas Bill has done, you said 113 specifically from ease of doing business, and there's 26,000. So if you're looking at that, you think, okay, there's still a long way to go. It's far less than 0.5%. But how many of them do you still think need to be done? So how far on that process are we?
So firstly, I think this is a great start, as I was saying. But it is not.
It also sets the framework for
it sets the framework.
There could be a second bill, third bill.
Absolutely. This is going to happen. But it is not even the tip of the iceberg. It is a snowflake. It's a tiny snowflake sitting on top of the tip of the iceberg, called excessive compliances. Now, how many of them should be retained? How many of them should not be retained? According to our estimate, about half of them can go very easily.
Okay.
But that needs debate, that needs ministerial and bureaucratic engagements to understand the ground realities. We have done our work as scholars. So as Puritans, we will say this needs to be done. But the on-ground conversations could be different, to which we are open.
Okay. Let me come to a broader issue, right? Let's now try and put this in the greater context of the India story and taking India forward, and what does it mean to make India one of the most developed and prosperous countries going forward, and ease of doing business is very clearly. You said everyone agrees, including the government, that it needs to be done. If there is one major problem that you often heard complained about in India when it comes to doing businesses, okay, let me try and put this into some sort of a framework. There are good people and there are bad people. There are guys who are complying with the law and wanting to be honest and do all the right things, and there are bad guys who are crooks and whatever, right? The objective should be that a good person should be treated with kid gloves and should never face any problems and never be harassed, and if somebody is harassing, that person should be beaten and said, go away, don't harass the person, and the bad person should be punished. In India, that quite often does not happen. Even if you're a good person, you can face harassment, you can be caught up in courts for years altogether, and if you're a bad person and there's delays happening and you are maybe facing punishment 6-7 years later, sometimes you'll just have bribed your way and got out of it. So that you want to incentivize people to be good and disincentivize them from being bad. It's human psychology. That sometimes doesn't happen here. And the delays in our processes add to that. Would you agree with that overall construct that I painted?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The incentive to do good is not very much. The incentive to do bad and run away with it is higher. So what I see this is that when the 1991 reforms happened and the quota permit Raj was removed, was ended, the tyranny of that quota permit Raj ended. What the governments and the subsequent governments after that forgot was finally there is an Inspector Raj. That Inspector Raj thrives on these compliances. With the reforms in compliances, we will see the end of Inspector Raj. Who is behind the Inspector Raj are the policymakers, various ministries. Now let me tell you how much energy of our economic ministries is going into retaining the tyranny of compliances. Every year, approximately 4,000 to 6,000 new compliances are added, or they change. They could be filings, they could be disclosures, they could be actual physical inspections. Last year, 6,815 changes happened in compliances. Last month, 636. Last week, 222, which means approximately 22 changes in compliances are happening every day. This is where the mind of our economic ministries, the officials there, the policymakers is going. This is the energy that is being dissipated to ensure that the clasp of the Inspector Raj
But those changes
remains.
could be positive changes. Maybe they're making it easier in some cases.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
You're being cynical. Okay.
I doubt it because I've seen some of these. In fact, this morning...
You're a journalist. It's your job to be cynical, which is good. But
yesterday, there were 20 new compliances that happened. Just yesterday. I'm giving you yesterday's data.
Okay.
So that is the
that
rate.
Red tape. Okay. But from the principle of it, when you see the big changes that are happening, let's try and find some big bang ideas, low-hanging fruit. Somebody watching this saying, all right, let's do something dramatic and decisive to try and change the atmosphere and signal that red tape will be cut and, boost animal spirits. When it comes to taxation, people will argue that in the last 3 or 4 years, a fair amount has happened to make it faceless, to reduce rent-seeking, to make sure that, if you're paying your taxes, you'll get your returns really fast and the process will be streamlined. And the interesting thing, Gautam, is that the results then start to show. You're seeing the number of people who are filing tax returns. You're seeing the amount of tax coming in. If you simplify things, you make it easier to have compliance, quite often the rewards are instant. Is that a good lesson to what we should do?
I agree.
I'm going to come to some of the things that need to be done, but is that an example of what we should follow?
I agree with the processes of the tax compliances being eased. I disagree with the manner in which status quo is being continued, in the sense that You may have 6 crore filers, but of which only 1.5 or 2 crores are actually paying the taxes. So I think that the ease of paying taxes is a good thing. But if every budget you are going to keep raising the people who have to pay taxes and continue to put the burden on that small constituency of people, it's not going to work. Okay. At some point you need to reverse this. You need to end this every budget. How much tax has been reduced, etc. I don't think this is a right thing. One point here. The manner in which the PAN came for income tax is what is required for an entrepreneur. Let there be an entrepreneurial number. Because each entrepreneur has to give the same information in different manner to different ministries. The Food FSSAI Act wants something else. The Environment Protection Act wants something else. The labor provisions, several of them, need something else. The state laws seek something else. If there is one enterprise, one number, like a PAN number, where, like Aadhaar for instance, if it can be digitally placed there with a flick of a button, all the regulators can get access to all the information that they need, from RBI, SEBI to food inspector, etc. I think that is where. So income tax you mentioned is a good thing. It's a good model. It needs to be transposed on entrepreneurial number.
So, okay, let's look at some of the big pending reforms or the quick reforms that could come. As I said, we're all in agreement that the basic principle should be reward the good and punish the bad. Are we clear on that? Therefore, the question should again be, one of the major areas obviously that we keep talking about on the show is judicial reforms. You've got to shorten the period because long, lengthy legal proceedings, in a sense, a person who's guilty wouldn't mind a process taking 7 years. A person who's innocent wants it done, over with and finished so that he or she can exonerate himself or herself. So you need to compress that. Would you say that that's one of the major items that has to be done?
It is. But do you really think that the judiciary is an institution that is open to reform, leave our own criticism? Do you think we can criticize the judiciary sitting out here and still remain sitting here without being hauled up for contempt? Okay. I think judiciary is a gone case. We have to just live with the nonsense that we have.
Well, yes and no. I mean, look, hang on. It's not entirely sometimes in the hands of the judiciary. There are reforms.
I'm not talking about judges. I'm talking about the entire judiciary in the sense, so, if lawyers make their money through prolonging of trial, where do you think this is going to end? So if you're talking about judicial reforms, it's actually advocate reforms, where the incentives of the advocates need to change before they are taken to the High Court. Okay. Secondly, you have these SATs, you have these tribunals, right? Let us look at Securities Tribunal. The matter, somebody loses a matter at SEBI, he goes to SAT. SAT undoes what SEBI has done. They go to Supreme Court. Even the very essence of having a tribunal has been wasted. Now you should say the tribunal
and all of that
is the last
after 2 years of delay.
Yeah, and look at the illiteracy. RBI came out with a fantastic proposal to protect investors. SAT unturned it. The tribunal unturned it, and Supreme Court agreed with it. I'm talking about this cryptocurrencies, where RBI did the right thing. So, but as a regulator, it did the right thing by the consumers. But okay, the judicial process is ended. So you need literacy there as well.
You're going to need hours to discuss each of these things individually and what the merits and the demerits were. So I'm looking at the broader picture. There are still ways in which you can unburden the judiciary. The government is a major litigant, right? If the government was to just reduce the amount of areas which it itself is litigating, that takes 50% of the burden out. That can be done at the press of a button. Something else that can be done at a press of a button, something which industry has been clamoring for, have a statute of limitations or a law of limitations. If something has been done and you've not been able to establish it or prove it within 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, the matter should drop. Again, that reduces 20% of the burden. 2 simple steps. 60-70% of the pressure on the judiciary could just go away. Why don't we do it?
It may not be such a straight line. I think there is enough creativity in the system to ensure that they continue. However, the points that you make are right, and I think it needs a deeper discourse. I don't know much about it, so I don't want to comment too early.
Okay, but those are the sort of things that you feel
absolutely
can potentially...
These are low-hanging fruits that can happen. You may not even need a legislative change. It could just be an executive decision.
Okay, if that happens, that'll be good. Okay, from your point of view, low-hanging fruit, what can be done next 6 months to make it? I mean, look, it's a great step. let's not be critical. I'm glad that people have, a bill has come, passed within 1 year to say, let's ease compliance, let's make ease of doing business more important. It's a great step, but I think the question is glass half full, glass half empty, a lot more still to be done, obviously, which there is. So what would you do?
My fear is next 6 months, there is not going to be any more economic reforms.
The next 6 months after that will be elections. You have only 6 months now before elections.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think elections have already begun, and you can see it through the violence that's happening around us all the time. You can see it in the new nomenclatures of the opposition versus the governing coalitions, etc. That's happening. I think the entire energy of our political class is going to be on elections, and perhaps rightly so. This is a cost that democracies have to bear. Whoever comes in the next government, if the incumbent government continues, I'm supremely optimistic about the changes. If it's a new government, we'll need to see what they do.
All right, so in any case, you're working on the next set of recommendations.
Absolutely. We do our dharma.
Whoever is in power, it makes sense to have ease of doing business and ease of compliance. See, that's the way the India story will move forward, which I guess is the...
Our job is to put all the ideas out there in public domain for the political class to pick up and run with, whichever suits them or whichever they think would do good to the country.
All right, Gautam Chikermane, been pushing a lot of the things that are there in the Jan Vishwas Bill. So congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us. Right.